Hey everyone, my name is Penny Zanker, and it's time to reset. This podcast goes beyond just navigating change. It's about new ways of thinking about how you can approach challenges, how you can shift your mindset when needed, create some space and grace for yourself so that you can rethink, recharge, and reprioritize when and where needed. Are you ready to unlock your full potential? Thank you for hitting play and sharing this next episode with me. It's time to reset. Hello, hello, hello. It's good to have you here. And today we're going to talk about, some important aspects of why more isn't the answer. We don't want to do more. We want to do less, but we want to achieve more. Remember that. It's not do more, it's achieve more. And that's what we're going to talk about today as we look at how strategic leaders, they prioritize their time, their talent, and their tactics. And we have a wonderful guest today here for you guys. Rich Horwath is here with us, and he is the leading authority on strategic thinking and the founder of the Strategic Thinking Institute. So that's what we need more of, is strategic thinking. So I'm so glad that he's here. He's a New York Times and Wall Street Journal bestselling author of, get this, eight books. So this guy knows what he's talking about, including the book Strategic, the skill to set direction, create advantage, and achieve executive excellence. He's helped over 1 million leaders develop their strategic mindset, and his insights have been featured in Harvard Business Review, Forbes, Fast Company, and he's worked with executives from Google, FedEx, Intel, and the like. And of course, he's been on all the major news outlets, ABC, NBC, and so forth. So we are in for a real treat. So welcome to the show, Rich.
Penny, it's great to be with you today.
The first question I want to pop out there, because I think strategic thinking is, I want to hear it from you. Why is it important today?
Well, the reality is today we have more complexity than ever before. With artificial intelligence now, we've got lots of information. And really what's going to separate people moving forward is not the amount of information. As you said in your opening, it's not about more. It's about what can we do with that more. And so really strategic thinking is our ability to wade through all of that complexity, all of that information, and really pull out the few insights. And I define an insight as a learning that leads to new value. So our ability to pull out those insights and ask, so what? What does this mean to myself, my team, my company? And how can we provide greater value with this idea or this insight to the people that we serve, our customers and consumers? So today, we've got to have strategic thinking because things are getting more complex. We need to simplify. To your point, we need to not do more, but we need to see more and make more of the things that we see.
Yeah, I like the way that you put that. And also, I believe that it's super important today because people aren't thinking anymore, right? Let me just go to ChatGPT and let it think for me. All the AI that's out there, I think, has made us think less and feel like we don't need to. And I think that's absolutely false and the wrong perspective. And I'm hearing you say that too, is that ChatGPT isn't going to make the insights for us. We're going to make different connections. And if we're not thinking, then we can be led into a lot of wrong directions. Let's talk about that, where people think that AI is going to think for them. What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, Penny, it's a great observation. And I would agree with you. Instead of thinking, people are reacting. We're reacting to the text messages that we just got on our phone, reacting to email, whatever's on the news. So we're in a constant state of reaction. And when we're in a state of reaction, we're not working on our agenda, our priorities, with our goals. We're working on somebody else's. So in order to pull that back, to your point, we've got to step back and reflect. And I'm saying step back because that's the first step in your framework in the reset mindset, which I love because it reminds us that we don't want to just be launched into everything. Like you said, physically stepping back creates that trigger mentally that we need to pull back and really assess What are we doing? Why are we doing it? How could we do it a little bit differently or better? So, yes, AI is going to be important. There's a lot of great functionality for it, but the reality is we still need to be the champions of our thinking, which is going to create the frameworks that are going to allow us to be successful. Because again, as individual strategists, we all have our time, our talent, and attention each day. The way that we allocate our time, attention, and talent is really going to be our strategy in the real world. So again, we can't leave that to ChatGPT. We've got to allocate those resources ourselves.
We were talking earlier about, being more strategic. So what is that, strategic thinking? So what does that mean exactly? And how does that, I know you've wrote a whole book on it, right? As to how it can really create an advantage for us and give us that direction. Where does our focus need to be to understand how to leverage that strategic thinking?
Yeah. So one of the things to consider is, think about the last week that you had and think about the meetings, the one-on-one meetings, maybe team meetings, maybe customer meetings, maybe reports that you filled out, and ask yourself as you reflect back on that week, how many new learnings did you really have? And are you using this week to be better at what you do? And to your point, Penny, what we're not doing is we're not recording our learning. So in the broad strokes, being strategic is being intentional about learning from every interaction. What did we take away? What could we have done differently? And what will we do better in the future when we have those interactions? Because as we all know, experience is important, but if we only rely on experience and we don't build our expertise, then we're not going to get better. So strategic is really mining every interaction that we have for those new learnings or insights that are going to make ourselves and our teams more valuable to the people that we serve.
So what do you recommend that people do? I mean, we're all busy, right? We've got so many things to do. As a matter of fact, I've heard leaders say that they don't have time to lead, that they have so many different things going on. So how do you make strategic thinking and these critical reflections, how do you suggest, I call them reset practices, right? Taking that time to take that reflection. What are some suggestions that you have that help people to institutionalize and make it part of their practice and not when I get to it, because they never will?
Yes, Penny, you're exactly right. So Jeff Weiner was the CEO of LinkedIn for a long time. He's the chairman now. And he was quoted as saying, the key of time management is carving out time to think as opposed to constantly reacting. And I like the word that he used there, carving out time, because to your point just a moment ago, Penny, if we allow it to potentially happen, it's not going to happen. There's always going to be something that's going to take up the space in that vacuum. So we've got to carve it out. We've got to be intentional. So, anybody out there that does physical workouts, and interestingly, the research shows that the average CEO today, she or he does about 45 minutes of physical exercise a day. So they're intentional about their physical fitness. What I would encourage people to think about is, are we being intentional about the way that we're learning each day? And part of that is taking time for ourselves to think strategically. And so typically I recommend people take about 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes at the midday, and 10 minutes at the end of the day, and really reflect on, first at the beginning of the day, what am I grateful for? What do I want to accomplish today? And how can I be of value to others? And then midday, ask ourselves, how are we doing on those things? Are we being of value? Are there things that we need to do differently? And at the end of the day, what are we grateful for? The experiences, the interactions that we had. And then what did we take away from those things that we could do differently tomorrow? So I think, again, as simple as carving out 5 or 10 minutes 3 times a day is at least a start to do that. And then I think an advanced practice is to now start using these techniques with your team. So once a week, once every couple of weeks, carve out an hour, 30 minutes with your team and think about the business. What's working? What's not working? What should we do more of? What should we do less of?
I mean, we're already having enough meetings, right? So one of those meetings could be dedicated specifically to checking in simple. I love the simple framework of just what's working and what's not working. Double down on what's working. And, often people don't stop to really think about what's working so that they can repeat what's working. And then they're like, oh, why isn't this working anymore? Well, because you didn't really get clarity on what specifically was working.
Exactly, exactly. There's this thing in psychology, and I'm sure you heard it, called the negativity bias, where, as human beings over millions of years, we've always focused on the negative, the dangerous, the things that aren't working because, years, hundreds of years ago, that could have, stopped our survival. So we always focus on that. But today, we need to move out of that and not focus on what's not working, but what is working. Where did we provide value today? What were the things that resonated with the people that we talked to? Where did we provide moments where we listened, where we empathized, and where we were inclusive with other people's perspectives, other people's ideas, and then we were able to channel that into something valuable for the team. So I love your idea of not just focusing on what's broken, but let's bring it back to what's really working.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love your 3 times a day, 10 minutes. We all can carve out 10 minutes. And, I think if we just left every day with one insight of,
Yes.
Just one insight, I think we all try to do too much. Let's write down 10 things that I learned today, or it's all or nothing, right? It's too much. So just one thing that would make the biggest difference that struck you today, I think is powerful enough. Do you suggest that we have a journal, that we write that down? Like, do you have, what's the best way to capture those insights and take action on them, right? Because it's one thing to say, well, I learned that I should be more empathetic because I overreacted on the situation.
Mm-hmm.
And then, tomorrow comes and I overreact again. So, like, where do we record them and how do we put them into action? And maybe is one a day too much? And maybe it's one a week. I don't know. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, so I've studied other leaders. So people like Meg Whitman, she was the CEO of eBay and HP Enterprises, and somebody like Sarah Blakely, the self-made billionaire CEO of Spanx. Both of those women talk in depth about the importance of insight and idea capturing. And so they both talk about using hardcover journals. And I think to your point, Penny, today, it's really what's most convenient. And for most people, they have a phone with them all the time. So using an app like OneNote or Evernote or the notes section of your phone, sometimes people email them to themselves. Some people still like the physical journal or the day planner. So whatever you have with you all the time is what I would encourage you to use. And then what you'll notice is once you start doing it once a day, and I would recommend once a day, because typically if there is no learnings for a day, then you can say to yourself, right, well, that was a learning in and of itself. What meetings did I have that contributed no learnings today?
Right. So, no value. Right. Because
yes.
The learning is the value. Yeah, you're right.
Exactly. So maybe I pull those meetings off. So I would encourage people to shoot for at least one a day. And then what you'll notice, you start to develop categories. So one category might be the culture of our company. Another category might be our customers. Another category might be relationships. And then you'll even find some personal ones that pop in there too. And then what I'd recommend is take time once a month, maybe it's 10 minutes at lunch, and go back through those ideas, go back through your notes and ask yourself, which of these is important right now? Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, said he would take one day a quarter with no email and no phone, and he would go back through his ideas from the past couple of years and ask himself, what's important to Amazon right now? Even somebody today, Jensen Huang, he's the CEO of NVIDIA. NVIDIA is a super successful company. They're in the GPU, the graphic process unit space right now. They're the most successful stock in the last 10 years. He actually creates accountability for ideas and insights. So he has everybody send him each week 3 to 5 ideas that they found important in their work. And then he said on Sunday night, and he said this in his book, he sits down with a glass of scotch. I may or may not recommend that for everybody, but he sits down with a glass of scotch and he reads through all of those emails to understand what's really happening in the company. So I think you brought up a great point, Penny. Not only do we want to capture these insights, but at some point we want to share these with other people. So if you're working with a team, ask each other, what would be a good way? Maybe it's a live meeting. Maybe it's on an intranet site. Maybe it's on a Teams chat room. But what would be a good way to share these insights with each other? Because if we're working with others, we want to create that collective learning.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what comes to mind is some of these collaboration tools could be really effective that you submit the ideas, because I love what you said about categorizing them.
Yes.
They can get overwhelming, and just simply categorizing them, but you have to do it while you every day when you're creating the idea or whatever, because it can get unwieldy. And then it's like any clutter, it all of a sudden it's like, how do I get through this? And then I'd rather, just take it all off my desk than go through it. But I find that, and I'm still working on it. tagging it regularly, and then they're easy to find again. And, when you're categorizing it, and there's collaboration tools that if you put it up into the tool like Miro or one of those online tools, then it's also easy to drag and drop the ideas as people are categorizing them, right? And then they're organized for you a little bit.
Yeah, I love those pieces of advice. I think, let's use technology to help us be better in those approaches. And, the other part of it too, Penny, I've seen a lot of successful leaders use, and one woman in particular I'm working with is she tries to batch her activities or activities and tasks each day so that if she's got one-on-one meetings, she doesn't spread the one-on-one meetings out throughout the week. She tries to batch them on Wednesday morning for this particular leader, because what she said is, she gets into a rhythm with the similar activity, and then the insights tend to categorize themselves. And then she puts those aside into that category of one-on-one meetings. So that might be something else for folks to think about. Obviously, we're still at the whim of other people's schedules too, so we can't batch everything. But if we can even batch email 3 times a day, 7 to 7:30, 12 to 12:30, 4:30 to 5, now what we see is, okay, maybe we start to get in a rhythm and those insights start to come up as categories.
Yeah, I like that. I had something just on the tip of my tongue and I forget. It'll come back to me. Or not. Which is the thing, is we're talking about ideas, right? Is capture them, and go through them. Oh, I think I was going to say that when you share them, the benefit there is that ideas spark other ideas, right? And that's also valuable because, that's why I like to read different books and ideas and perspectives, because it opens up my perspective. And then all of a sudden my thought process, is like, oh, and this and that, right? It's kind of a yes and type of thing if you've ever done improv.
Yes, absolutely. I think the yes and is a great technique, but I love your idea of getting in other input sources. Too often we allow groupthink. We work with the same team, we work in the same company, we move in the same circles, and so we're not getting different ideas. So I love your idea of, exposing yourself to different books, different articles, different websites, different people, different user groups, so that we're getting different inputs that stimulate different thoughts, different ideas.
Speaking of, the question that just came to me, I kind of like to go with the flow and whatever comes up with my intuition is, what do you most commonly hear from people who are reading your book? What are some of the most common insights that people are taking away that were the most valuable nuggets?
Well, the first one is, what does success really look like? Too often we get into this activity treadmill where we're just going, and your colleague is on a treadmill and your colleague's on a treadmill. So we're all on these activity treadmills, but we don't stop and get off and say, what is success really going to look like for us at the end of the year? Individually, as a team, as a company. So the first one is getting clarity around what are the goals that we have? What would success look like at the end of the year? Because we can't set strategy and set direction unless we all have a common ground on where we're trying to go, what that direction is. So I would say that's a big one, is just, what does success really look like? And then the other big one that comes up too, I think, is this idea of a leader is really designed to help people set direction and serve others in the achievement of those goals. So I think one of the things we've all got to be asking ourselves, whether we're in a leadership role or not, is how are we serving other people? Because the reality is none of us is going to be successful on our own. We all have to serve other people. The more value we create for others, the more value we're going to receive in return. So that would be something that people have said to me, hey, Rich, I didn't really make the connection that I need to be a servant leader no matter what my role is. I need to think about, how do I bring value to others before I get the value myself? Too often people are moving into days or meetings with their own agenda, but not really thinking about what's the other person's agenda.
Yeah, totally. And the first point that you mentioned, which is the collective goals, right? That we're stepping back and making sure that we are aligned and everyone is aligned on those core goals. So the stewardship and the setting direction and serving others while also serving those collective goals.
Yes.
Wonderful. So we're coming to the end of our time. Sort of, let's go with kind of a lightning round. So you mentioned, my book, The Reset Mindset, and I kind of talk about reset practices, reset moments, and we've talked about a number of different things here. But I wanted to ask you for some of your personal reset practices, right? So, what's like a mantra that you use to kind of reset your mindset? Like when things start going sideways, do you have a mantra or a quote or a saying or something that you kind of fall back on?
Yeah, the one that comes to mind is new growth comes from new thinking. So new growth comes from new thinking. Typically, Penny, when I'm in a rut, when I feel like I'm getting a little burned out, when I'm not maybe as adding as much value, I remind myself that I'm probably practicing Einstein's definition of insanity. I'm doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results, right? So it's a reminder then that if I'm going to have new growth, and typically I'll look outside and see there's a garden, and I'll remind myself, look, you've got to plant, you've got to give yourself some time to plant new ideas. So let's either today or in the next week carve out a half a day or a full day and really just spend time reflecting and thinking about what we can do differently.
I love the analogy of looking outside. I love that. That really makes it alive.
Yeah.
Pun intended.
That's good.
Because it really encapsulates the whole idea of growth and flowering, right? And achieving what it is that we want to achieve with our thinking. So that's important for us to take away from here. What about what's a favorite song that'll lift you up when you're feeling down?
Wow, that's a good question. I'll have to go with, and this is going to date me a little bit, but I'll have to go with Journey, Don't Stop Believing.
Okay.
Because I think that, it kind of starts slow, but it picks up. And it's one of those things that anytime we run into challenges, and we all run into challenges, the easiest thing to do is to start the negative self-talk. Well, maybe I'm not good enough today. Maybe it's not, I'm not the right person for this. So I think that song is one that does pick me up to say, look, you've got to believe in yourself, the work that you're doing, and your purpose is to serve others. So let's get back to that.
Wonderful. And how about what is something that you do to, and maybe you don't do it all the time, but that you recognize really works when you want to make a clear transition from one activity to the other? Do you have something that helps you to close off one activity so that you can move into the other? Specifically, most people think of, when the workday is over, right? And going home. Do you have sort of like a ritual or an activity that helps you to reset there?
Yeah. So I actually have a judge's gavel on my desk. And I actually send this to clients that I do coaching with sometimes too. It's a reminder to me that whatever happened today, I'm not judging it as good or bad, right or wrong. I'm just saying, what did I take away? What did I learn from that? And so I look at the judge's gavel. I think about, what did I do today? What can I do differently tomorrow? I put down my one learning, and then I gently tap that gavel, and I'm done for the day.
Well, it goes without saying, because we said it earlier about the one learning, right? That I love that you have the gavel, although it sounds like you're judging it if you have a gavel, right? It's a little judging.
Right.
But it reminds me of Fred Flintstone, when he goes, and the bird,
Yes.
and then yabba dabba do, right? That's his sort of, now
Yes.
it's time to reset. But what I meant was, it goes without saying is that, we talked about that one lesson, that one insight. That's such a great wrap up for the day. That's such a perfect reset practice to say, hey, I'm taking away something of value from today and not focusing on what I didn't do, because that's usually what one does in their transition. And then they feel awful. And then they keep thinking about going back to work or checking the email or doing something else because they feel like undone, like things weren't done. But having that lesson really does. And I don't do this regularly. So I want to think about incorporating that into my regular practice, because I think that's a really interesting and nice way to end the day as well. Is that one lesson. I like to do my gratitudes, and I like to do the things that are my wins. What did I do instead of what I didn't do? What did I do that really accomplished the value that I wanted to achieve? So
love it.
Wonderful. So how can people reach you and find out more information about you?
Yeah. So I'm a big believer in giving first. So I've got hundreds of free resources, articles, infographics, audios, and stuff on my website, strategyskills.com. So strategyskills.com, lots of free information there. And then you can learn more about the book Strategic as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here.
Penny, thanks. It was great to chat with you today.
And thank you all for being here. As you know, we wouldn't have a show if it wasn't for you. And we really want you to remember, coming back to that point of, it's not about doing more. It's about those insights and what those insights can do with you, for you, to help you to grow, to be better, to work smarter. And that's really what it's all about, so that we can achieve more by actually doing less. And we can do that through strategic thinking and creating space, these reset moments, so that we can create those insights, be more creative, and really live the kind of life that feels fulfilling and rewarding. And I know you want that as well. So thank you all for being here. I hope that right after this, you'll take one moment to write down one insight, and how you're going to put that into practice so that you can make it stick. That not just did you get the insight, but you're making it stick. So thank you so much. And we'll see you in the next episode. My name is Penny Zanker, and this is Time to Reset. Hey, thank you for spending this time with me. It really means a lot. If you're feeling a little off, distracted, overwhelmed, stuck, or just out of sync, remember that's your signal to reset. And that's all it takes, just recognizing one reset moment at a time. So stay tuned for more tips, tools, tricks, stories, strategies, all here on Time to Reset. We'll see you in the next episode.